play. The attunement to the present moment. The attention. The grip of attention on the present moment. Playing with the grip of attention. Holding on tight, letting go. Playing with the breath. Following the breath, leading the breath. Playing with the one and the zero, being the one, being a half, being a quarter, being a part. Playing with the space. Playing with the void. Playing with each moment. Memento ludi. Don't forget the play.
So when we're not playing with every moment, time gets stuck and we slip out of play. And then we interact with the moment based on a memory of the time, and we remove from the moment, and timelines get removed from one another. And so play is a way of bringing the timelines back into sync, of meeting each other here in the now. And play is never really like a static moment. It's a dance of going back in to find that moment, a willingness to again and again try and meet in the here and the now without an expectation of what that might be. And once we've slipped out of it, maybe
The memento ludi as the point of a plurality of potential timelines, rather than only one timeline being defined either by the past or by the future, by being stuck in a memory or being blocked by a fear, seeing a plurality of timelines in the present moment and being able to voluntarily decide, that is, to choose to let certain timelines die and to let others flourish, and to do so consciously with the full awareness that some timelines are better than others, some moves are better than others, using the axis mundi as the guideline of one's decision in every moment.
does it not need somehow the slipping out of the timeline to then decide which one you want to go back in? Doesn't it somehow take the absence of play to move back into play, and moments of stillness to assess what is going on? The difference of speed, of frequency, of interaction, of going more forward and more backward, and how these two movements meet. The rhythm determines, it needs a sensitivity to the rhythm, a sensitivity to tune in, and sometimes you lose that need to tap into the rhythm because you're in it, but then you slip out.
The meta play of playing with play, of knowing when to stop playing, to return to the void, which is the timelessness, which is the other pole of the timefulness of the memento ludi. So being completely in that present moment with all the potential timelines in front of one and deciding which one to choose, but then also deciding to exit all timelines and enter into timelessness. And then from there, being able to enter with clarity into the game of time and being able to choose well in the game of time with the awareness of the timelessness, the linear time of our lives contrasted with the circular time.
Play as a way of interacting with time and space and shaping it. Play as a curiosity towards space, a curiosity to the outside world of engaging with rather than bringing to, and this movement, this oscillation somehow is still needed to go towards and to come back, and to see how has the coming back changed how I then go forward. And it's this movement between past and present and meeting the other, the outside, in this movement. And so it's an ultimate form of dance. It's knowing when to step back and when to step forward. And speaking from memory, something that comes up is work versus play. When is something work and when is something play?
Work as involuntary play, having to play a specific game for a specific end, not for the joy of the play itself, but because something is required to continue playing. The sphere of play being continually constricted by the encroaching of work, of having to work more and more so we can play less and less, when actually we should be working less and less so we can play more and more. Dance, play, breath, all in one and one in all. Playing with dancing, playing with matter, energy and matter as the fundamental toys. Certain children get given different toys, certain adults are given different toys.
The toys, do they not somehow, are they determined by whether we choose to engage or whether we choose to give up our choice to engage for the sake of some form of retribution? Or is it sort of expecting exchange rather than going in there not knowing what will come? Work as a form of false security, that if you give up your willingness to choose how you engage, then you can be sure to get something back. And so somehow we're getting to this sort of idea of trust and security. And how do you trust? Where do you find the balance between trust and security? Like, do you offer your work for money because you need a security that what you're giving into the world is of value? And ultimately, can we find a time?
Work as a sphere where one sacrifices one's play right, one's right to play, sacrificing the right to play because between the people there is not enough trust. There's not enough trust to say, let's just play together and we know that we shall play well. The work relationship as a very tight form of play, a very specifically defined game, the contract as a very tightly worded set of rules of this is how we're going to play together, this is how long we're going to play together, this is exactly what is going to come out from this specific game. Whereas what we need are, rather than more words, we need deeper bonds in between the people, where from those deep bonds can emerge a greater variety of relationing.
Bonds and relation, and trying to gain power over, trying to ultimately gain security by taking the aliveness of what game has produced and trying to hold onto it and profit from it. This movement of thereby inflicting upon others your fear of that there is not enough to go around. And yet, nevertheless, is there not a need to define again and again, given on a certain moment, the rules by which we play? And how can these be something that we redefine again and again? And what does it take for us to sense which rules are adequate to a moment? What are the qualities that invite this ability, this sensitivity, and this attunement? Does it need at the same time
The redefinition of the rules as part of the game itself, a rhythm of redefinition, a rhythm of adjusting the game to the ever-evolving playground, attuning to the playground to see what game needs to be generated, attuning to the players to see what are the best moves which are going to generate the most potential. And it is with potential that we play fundamentally. It is from this potential that we choose which timeline are we going to actualize, which moment are we going to build, and from those moments, which monuments are we going to build to our individual lives, to our collective lives, to our lives as a species.
which monuments do we build? The image of jazz music comes to me. How do we let what something from is coming into us, how do we respond to it from moment to moment, again and again? And when do we go back to stillness, moments, different phases of this listening, of this attunement, complete chaos, disorder, and then why does it come back to a certain order? Like what is shaping it? Is it and what is shaping the game is ultimately what we should be asking. Is it one person? Is it several people? How boring it is to listen to just one person trying to play all over the others. Like, does it really sound nice?
Turn taking is the foundation of all games. In what ways does the universe take turns? In what ways does the universe play with itself? Taking turns to play different games, not always playing the same game, not always being stuck in the same game. Flexibility of games to be able to shift from one game to another. When the game no longer serves the players, then the game should be stopped and a new game should begin. The generation of a new game where everybody can say, okay, let's go play that game instead of playing this old game. This old game is boring and it's not fun anymore. But if there are no other games to choose from, then you have to keep playing just to keep busy, especially when you fear the void.
And the horror of just keeping on playing because otherwise, from moving away from something rather than towards something. What a paradox, like in and of itself. You consider play to be going towards something, but then actually continuing to go away. Somehow that then to me becomes work. It's like work, like coming away from for the sake of avoiding surrender and avoiding the burning down so that something new can form. And is that not a lot of what we're seeing, this avoidance of the burning down, this avoidance of the inevitable end of something? and thereby getting stuck in rigid positions and getting the impression that this is life, these rigid positions. And it's, what does it take to shake it all up again?
The fear of letting go, holding on to the game, holding on to the player, not be willing to let the player give its turn up, to release everything that it has accumulated back into the commons. The elders hoarding play, hoarding potential, and the youth struggling to actualize the little potential that they have, when it is the youth who have the great visions. Intergenerational play.
Intergenerational play, how do you wield the responsibility and the freedom that comes with a larger perspective? And ultimately, isn't adulthood or maturity choosing to wield that power ultimately wisely and for the sake of time moving upwards, or like the movement of energy going upwards in a spiral rather than downwards? And does it not take everybody to be willing to engage in this way of I am giving what I can to try and go forward to meet what is there, so that ultimately the universe can expand in a way that is beneficial to all? And then the question of free will comes, like, how much do we actually have?
Mm-hmm. Are we playing, or are we being played with? The role of the adult as the in-between of the youth and the elder, of facilitating the connection between those two poles. The youth in the present moment, ready to play with potential for its own sake. The elder trying to conserve potential so there will still be more for the next generations. And the adult balancing the two, making sure that potential is fairly distributed amongst the elders and the youths to facilitate intergenerativity, to keep the game playing, to make sure the playground keeps grounding.
Playground. It's the first time I've heard playground and generation in the sense of creating more, generation of leaving more out of what is there, and therefore degeneration as a means of pulling back to you, hoarding more than you actually need. And why? Because your fear of the future, your mistrust of the game of life. And so somehow it's like, it's what we believe to choose that manifests. Like, if we believe to choose that there is not enough, there will not be enough, and that will show. But then we are also, it's not just what my experience is now, it's also the experiences of generations before me. And it's
This is the foundation, our attunement to the game of life, whether we are well attuned or poorly attuned. And our attunement is broken by trauma and taboo, particularly by intergenerational trauma, which is interdegenerativity, the passing down through time of brokenness, of the incapability to play. And all that it leads to is the reproduction of degeneration, the reproduction of control and constriction, the unwillingness to play and to let other people play.
And then this false sense of play, of pretending that we're playing by not actually looking at the degeneration. The need for play to be both looking at and moving with, rather than turning away from and selling a game that actually deep down is contributing further to degeneration. And the confusion of moving in this world where one thing has a name when actually it is something completely different. And this sense of, what do we trust? Does the sense of deep wrongness isolate us from the game and make us retreat completely and ultimately then play the false game? Or do we seek to come out not knowing who we will meet out there? And isn't ultimately play going forth with what your sense of aliveness is?